Good morning everyone and welcome to another podcast. I'm out on the river again, chasing grayling again today. It's beginning of February. It's a beautiful sunny day, not a cloud in the sky, and there's been a nice frost overnight, so I'm hoping that might have shoaled a few of the grayling up. I've actually come to a bit of the river that I've not fished for years, and it holds plenty of grayling, but I've never really fished it that much for grayling, mainly fish it for trout in the summer and springtime. So I thought I'd give this a bit of a go today, just a bit of a change, and see if we can find a grayling or two in here. It's a little bit more industrial here, the river. A few factories and workshops on the side of the bank, tree lined, but all the trees are bare apart from the ivy that's growing up them. River's probably about 25 feet across here, and I'm actually perched on it looks like in a erosion defences really. It's some caged boulders, so it's a bit of a scramble in terms of walking up the river, and the wading isn't too pretty in this bit of river, so I've got my wading stick with me. I'm on a glide here, and there's two tongues of water at the top of the glide forming a bit of a riffle, and I'm going to fish up into here. I've got with my 9-foot 4/8 as usual river outfit. I'm going to start nymphing today. I think things are going to be deep today in all this bright sunshine and cold water. So I've got an orange beaded tungsten hare's ear on, size 14, just a single fly. I'm going to toss that up into the riffle and just let it drift back and see if we can get a take. Just going to clip my wading stick on. Yeah, wading can be slightly treacherous here, so just going to take it nice and easy. A few casts closer in, and then I'll gradually work this line out. Right, so I'm casting about 15-20 feet of line up. As usual, I've got my nice high-vis braided loop, which I've greased up with mucilin grease, and that's just trundling down at a nice pace. Just retrieving the line enough to keep in touch with it, keeping a bit of slack in there so I get a nice dead drift. Like I say, the grayling have eluded me slightly on this stretch of river. I know there's plenty in here. You tend to get sucked into keeping revisiting the places that you know fish well in winter, and you keep going back. So I always like occasionally to try some of the different spots, and not so bothered if I blank again or don't catch anything. I can just make a note that it's probably not the best winter spot. I mean, that's how I've discovered all these great little winter pools, is by just trying them and moving up and down the river. Right, I think a couple more casts and I'll move up here. Right, grab the old stick and try and carefully move up the river, but it is not easy. Again, start with a short cast and just let it work up. I'm hoping this fly's getting deep enough, but I've not touched the bottom yet, so if I'm not touching the bottom, I might have to just put something a bit heavier on. So I think these fish are going to be right down today. Right, I might have to do a bit of a spey cast here and just drop one out the other side of the river as well. There's a bit of a tongue of water moving in over the other side, and all the brash and the ivy and brambles and trees on the bank are just strewn with debris from the floods. A lot of rubbish come down. Luckily the river's back to a nice height now. As I mentioned on the podcast last week, in the floods it's really changed the pools round, and some of the pools that were there are no longer there, and some of the runs and glides have changed a little bit. Looks so fishy, this bit of river here. I've really wrapped up this morning because there was a frost, and as usual I've gone and put too many layers on, and even in the shade here I'm pretty hot, so I think I will move up and get in the water. I'll fish this little glide out now. I often do this. You worry about being cold and make yourself too hot, but then again I prefer it to be this way around, and I'm sure once I get in the water I'll cool down a touch. Now I'm going to have to get in on these horrible slippy rocks here, and it's really horrible wading. It's one of those wades where it's an uneven kind of rocky bottom, and your feet are always going down the little holes and pockets, and you don't have any steadiness, so every step is a potential disaster. Right, so I've got in the water. Undercut bank on the left hand side. There's 4 trees with roots coming into the water, and you can see the river's undercut them. On the right hand bank, very steep, probably 15-20 feet high, tall trees, and then a little workshop behind it. I'll toss this fly up and start around middle of the river. Fairly short cast, I think, because it's not too deep here, so I imagine this fly is going to nail the bottom. I once hooked a fish on this stretch of river that tore off at such a rate, and then it snapped me, and to this day I always wonder what it was, whether it was a big trout or maybe a rogue barbel. There's the odd barbel occasionally in the river here. I was fishing on with a clinking dink on a duo on quite a still pool, so the nymph was just hanging underneath the clink hammer, and I remember the clink hammer just slipped away and I struck in, the rod bent, and then the reel just span and screeched and span, and this fish just disappeared up the pool. Yes, I'm in. Nice. Feels like a grayling. It's going downstream of me. I've just got to watch it doesn't get into the riffle. It is a grayling. Perfect. Whoa. And it's in the net. Lovely. Oh, I'm chuffed to bits with that. Fantastic. Oh, that's really made me happy, because I've never had a winter grayling out of this particular beat of river. Now that took almost on the drop. I just dropped it in the top of the riffle and the line shot away beautifully. I'm going to sort myself out and put my net back on. Anyway, my story I was telling. Fish took off, took 30-40 feet of line off the reel, and then just snapped me. And that was years and years ago, and I still remember that fish. And there is a saying in fishing, it's the ones that get off that you remember, because it's that mystery of thinking, gosh, what was it? What could have done that to me? I'll never forget that fish. Snagged up there. Right, snagged up on the bottom, so I think I don't know if I'm going to get that off or not. I'm going to gingerly wade upstream. Try and get this off without losing a fly. Tip it today and leader. Quite often I'll use a tapered leader in the river, but with using such a heavy fly, it's going to turn over. It doesn't need a tapered leader, so I've just got, I think it's £3.5 tippet straight through off the spool, about 9 foot's worth. But it is quite fine. It's a fine diameter £3.5, and I want something that's going to sink nicely. And you tend to find that them finer lines tend to get down a little better than the thicker ones. Such hard wading here. I have fallen in on this bit before as well. There we go. I've got the fly out now. I have gone over in this section before, so that was in summer. I don't really want to repeat it today. Right, little casts, and just drop this nymph back up and see if we can get ourselves another grayling. I do love fishing at this time of year. Don't get me wrong, I love any type of fly fishing, whether it be for salmon or trout and grayling, pike. But something about fly fishing on a nice winter's day, you just feel like you're a bit more alive, if that makes sense, whether it's the coolness of the water or the fact that, you know, fishing can be harder at this time of year in terms of, you know, the water temperature. Or maybe it's the fact that we're after grayling, which is such a beautiful fish, wild fish. It just makes it a little more special, I think. You feel like you've almost got one over on the day because you've managed to get out fishing even though it's cold and wintry. You've snuck out to the river and managed to grab a couple of hours, and if you get a fish in those couple of hours, it's a real achievement. Whereas those long days of summer, you can fish from dawn till dusk, and it's all nice and comfortable and the water's warm, and which is all great, but I just, maybe it's just me, but I just feel a little bit more sense of achievement catching a winter grayling. Right then, just going to explore this undercut section on the left hand side. It looks very fishy, but difficult cast because you're essentially going under a tree. Readjust my stance a bit. Right, I'm going to try and slot one under the roots and let it come under the tree roots. Oh, that was a take, I think. That's where I want it. Right under the undercut. I'd certainly expect a fish in there somewhere. The other thing you find at this time of year is that when you get into a tree, which you inevitably do, I missed that one, inevitably do when you're river fishing on tree-lined rivers, far more chance of losing your fly in winter. Without those leaves on the trees, the leader easily just wraps around the tree branches, and once it's wrapped round, you've had it. Whereas in summertime, when it's nice and leafy, quite often your fly just gets nicked into a leaf and you can pull it through. Right, a couple more casts, I think, and I'll venture upstream. It's a nice run ahead of me. You can see my breath nicely. It's lit up in the little columns of sunlight just coming through the trees. Right, grab the old stick, and I'm just going to have a prod around because I think it goes fairly deep here. I think I'll manage one more round of casting in this run and then I'll have exhausted it. These waders were a bit leaky as well on the left leg, so I've effected a repair on them, and this is a bit of a test just to see. I'm snagged up again. Right over. It's come off, I think. I think I might have lost my fly there. Yes, new fly time. I think I'll go with another orange tungsten bead hairs here. Feels like the right fly for the day, and quite often when I'm upstream nymph fishing for grayling. I use killer bugs, so I thought it'd be nice to have a little bit of a change. That's that done. Right, mental note not to cast in that part again, and keep the cast fairly short, I think, just here. As I've said quite a lot in these podcasts, with your nymph fishing, especially for grayling at this time of year, it's all about depth. You need to make sure you're getting your flies down to the feeding zone, which is basically just off the bottom of the river. And there's a number of ways you can do that. Obviously, your length of leader and the type of leader. Fluorocarbon will sink a little more. The weight of your fly. Heavier flies will go down quicker. And the distance you're casting upstream. So if you cast a longer way and let it drift for longer, the fly has more time to sink. Once you get into it a bit, you can regulate your depth a little bit just by altering your cast length. Obviously, if you're fishing through extremes, going into real depth, you need to alter the weight of your fly, and that's the primary thing you'll go to, is just nipping the fly off and tying a heavier one on. But if you're not getting down to the bottom, that can be the difference between a blank day and a successful one. Right, I'm going to wind this in and very carefully negotiate my way up to the next run, which looks nice to me. And if you're into your reservoir fishing, and the reservoirs are just kind of opening now, we have a load of new patterns in the shop this year. Jelly frits and ecstasy eggs, chewing gum worms, all those bright, colourful stuff. Work very well very early in the year before we move on to the more natural patterns. It's quite interesting when I kind of advertise these flies. You get not that many, but the odd comment saying, I shouldn't be using those, they're not flies, that's not proper fly fishing. And it always makes me smile a little bit, because I can imagine that was just the same when Skews was having the arguments about nymph fishing, with natural nymphs. And it's all fishing at the end of the day, and life's too short and too serious. Shouldn't be getting serious and worrying about fishing. It should be fun. And my motto has always been, if you're enjoying yourself, that's all that matters, and never mind what anyone else says or thinks. And personally, I like every style of fly fishing, whether it be pulling lures, fishing delicate drives for wild fish on rivers, salmon fishing, saltwater fly fishing for pike. It all has its own place and its unique elements that I enjoy. And I'd get bored just doing the same thing. That people fish, for instance, kind of just dry flies every day. I mean, dry fly fishing's great, but just fishing the same flies on the same bits of river constantly would, personally, from my point of view, I'd find quite dull. But others don't, and that's great. I would never dream of criticising the way anyone else fish just because it's not a way I would tend to fish. It's not the way I am. Right, this is quite deep here actually. I think this is where I fell in before. It's a steady, fairly swift glide actually, reasonably deep, with lots of pockets and holes, and it looks deep from bank to bank as well. There's a big rock on the right hand bank with the current just swirling round it. Steady glide, bit of a bubble stream on the left hand side, and again lots of overhanging trees, big trees that have been undercut, and you can see all the roots kind of writhing down and round into the water. I will get a bit of line out here and just fish my way up, I think, and just see if anything grabs. I'll just cover it in a bit of a fan. I'm going to put a reasonably long cast out because it's I say long, probably 20, 25 feet, something like that, which is long for a river really, 30 feet. And just so this fly gets down. Yeah, I put a few casts out here and it's not once looked like it's graced the bottom, so I suspect it's not quite getting down enough. I'll just have another cast further up. I'll wade up a touch and then I might just nip a heavier fly on. It may just be because I'm on the lip of the pool here and it's just bringing my line down a bit too quick, so I'll just get out the lip and see if that helps. But it's thigh high, which at this pace I imagine is reasonably deep for nymph fishing. Right, I'm out the lip of the pool, so we'll see if anything's going to grab this. Oh, might have been a take there. It did shoot off a bit. Yeah, and that just touched bottom a bit there. Good, that means it's getting down. Right, grab the stick, make my way up again. This is where I went in, definitely. It's horrible. In fact, I'm just going to push out of this deep bit, I think. Don't fancy a dunking today. It's too cold. That's a bit nicer wading now. It's gone a bit more gravelly underfoot. And now I'm stood in the river, I don't feel too hot anymore. It's balanced it out nicely. Can just feel the cold just sneaking into my toes. I'm only going to be fishing probably for another hour at the most, so I'll be fine. And now I'm really thankful I put all these extra layers on. It's just about right. Right, I'm going to fish this reasonably quick, because it's quite a long glide and I suspect most of the action is going to be up towards the riffle, which is a good 60 or 70 feet away from me. Ooh, big boulder under the water there. Oh, it's gone deep again. And the sunlight's just hitting my high-vis braided loop. It's really standing out on the river. Oh, that was a movement. Right, move up again. And the riffle at the top looks lovely. I've invested in some reactor light glasses this year that basically turn into sunglasses when it's sunny outside, and they're not polarised, but it's made a big difference to my fishing. It's always difficult when you wear glasses, because what you really want is a nice big pair of wrap-around polarised sunnies, but to get them in a prescription is so expensive. And it's very easy to drop them in the river, or when you're outdoors you soon get them scratched and whatever, taking them on and off. So these have been lovely, just help me to not be having to squint as much when it's sunny. It's still deep. I bet there's the odd surprise in this pool here. I bet there's the odd surprise, big trout or barbel or something lurking down there. Let's move up again. Just doing a few little roll casts over to the other side of the river as I'm walking. Quite often in the springtime they'll rise really close to the bank here, only a foot off the bank. There's a little bubble stream coming down and just picking off the flies, but the Grayling at this time of year they're going to be down deep and potentially all over the river. Hopefully they're going to be shoaled up just off the riffle at the top and we'll get a cast over them. Right, I've walked up again. I've got a few more trees to watch out for here, kind of spindly branches that are almost arching over the entire river. I've just got to be careful with the trees, but it's starting to speed up and shallow up, so just getting into the zone now where I would expect to fish. He says. It's down to more kind of just above knee height, which is about right for fishing a tungsten beaded nymph. Oh, it's come off. It was on for a couple of seconds and then off again. Typical Grayling, that twist and off. Must have just nicked it. And I've lines tangled around me wading stick as well. Let me get myself untangled and sorted. Now, lost that one, but on a positive note, it was exactly where I thought it would be, which is always pleasing. Lovely run this. It's the kind of water I love fishing. Slightly turbulent, knee height, gravelly bottom, coming down the river at just enough pace to keep the fly moving. You can just imagine them fish just sat off the bottom, just gently waiting for something to come down. And it's amazing how high some of this debris is in the trees that was left from the floods. It's scarily high. And I'm having to look up to see it. It just shows you how high this river was. Right, and again move up. And even as I'm walking upstream to move to a further spot, I'm doing little casts almost as I would do if I was fishing a traditional spider upstream, just with a nymph, because you never know, I might just have missed something, and it's always worth, if you can, just having a little fish as you walk, and you will pick up the odd bonus fish. Right, we're starting to enter now, if I was coaching, what I would call the real hot spot. Knee height, nice pace of water, riffles now 30-40 feet ahead. There'll definitely be fish in this zone here. And let's see if we can get into one. I think one of the biggest mistakes beginners make when they're river fly fishing is fishing or putting all their efforts and time into the deep pools, the slow deep pools where they can see fish rising. And they are some of the hardest places to catch fish fly fishing on a river. They're places where really most of the time you need to be dry fly fishing, small flies, very, very delicate presentation, any splashy casting, or if you flash your rod or your reel or yourself over the pool, scatter the fish. Very, very difficult. Whereas some of the easiest places for people to fish and catch fish when they're starting off on a river are the places they skip over, so the fast riffles at the heads of the pools. And it's always going to be fish stacked up in those riffles because they're getting the first dibs on all the food coming into the pool, And from a fishing point of view, because the water's turbulent, yes, you can't see the fish, but they can't see you. So you splash your cast in, and you know, if you stumble a bit while you're wading and all those things, it doesn't matter as much. And also that the fish aren't going to be examining the fly as it comes past them like they might do on a still pool. In those fast running riffles, they're just grabbing stuff as it comes past. So they've got less time to back away from your fly. Once they've committed, that's it. So if I'm ever taking a beginner out on the river, I'm always going to go to those nice fast running riffly bits, and more often than not they'll catch a fish. Right, let's just keep slowly moving up. Just about lost all sensation in my feet or my toes, so I think I might just manage this pool and either get out and have a break, or I might just call it a day. Depends if we get into anything else. If I have another fish out of here, I'll probably call it a day. Nice bubble stream in the river here directly ahead of me. I think that's where they're going to be. Smells lovely out on the river today. Slightly perfumed and earthy. You know? Trying to work out where the smell's coming from. I recognise it, and you know when you recognise one of those smells and you can't quite put your finger on it. There's occasionally when I'm out and about, I'll smell a lady's perfume, and it just hits me. And I was trying to for ages think, what is it, that perfume? I recognise it, and suddenly it came to me. It was one of my primary school teachers who used to wear it every day, and my mind just flashed back to her. It's amazing how smells can trigger memories from so long ago. What I'd really like to smell now is the smell of a grayling in my net. That lovely, unique, cucumbery, fishy, herby type smell of grayling that lingers in your net or in your hands for hours after. I love the smell of grayling. I'm going to try one in the shallows over the far side and just run it through there. So the last fish I got earlier was quite shallow indeed and took almost instantly, so it must have been at least had its eyes up a touch. Yeah, I've still got a good 20 feet of this real hotspot fishing left. I lost one so far. A little bit of movement there, but I think that was just a rock. So again, a little roll cast over to the other bank. And I'm to do a few little side casts now just to undercut the overhanging branches. It looks a really good lie just under this overhanging tree. See if I can drop one in. Yeah, there we go. Run it down over the overhanging tree and try one more. That's the fella. Oh, don't believe it. Off and on again. Bump and gone. And now I've snagged it on a rock. Let me see if I can get this off without him to wade. Has it come off? Yes. Didn't want to wade through this prime spot, but I was too lost in this run. Right, I'm on to my last 20 to 30 feet of good fishing here, I think, and then I think I'm going to call it a day, not because I'm not enjoying myself, just because my toes are pretty numb now. They're there's still time to just get something in this top of this pool here. It's getting quite choppy, the water here, but I've had plenty of grayling in very choppy, fast water before. I've had him in almost white water where it's boiling down and no one would think of fishing. In fact, I've had a very big grayling like that. Probably one of my biggest ever. Was in almost rapids, and I've just lost a fly on a rock there. I'm just going to tie something a bit lighter on for this last 10 feet, just a little pheasant tail or something, I think. It's shallow here, but still worth fishing. Right, let's drop this little pheasant tail in and fish this last bit of rapids out, shall we? Really hard casting here. The trees are all hanging and strands of ivy hanging off the branches right down to the river, so very easy to get snagged up. Ah, yes. Oh, it's off again. Oh no, 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 no. Oh dear. Right in the riffle. It was on, and then it twisted and turned, and it kind of floated back towards me, and it's just managed to slip the hook. Ah. Well, I think that's a good place to stop. I've reached the top of the run here anyway. It's been a wonderful morning's fishing. One in the net, I think 2 or 3 lost. All good. As ever, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. For more information on our fishing flies, please visit us at shop.peaksflyfishing.com, or for our fly fishing tuition, it's www.peaksflyfishing.com. Until next time, thank you, bye bye.